One by one, the rival kings of Egypt came to Pia's court to submit. He received them with dignity, but made clear who was master. When they tried to enter his palace, Pia refused them entry until they had been ritually purified. He considered them impure by his standards. Tefnakht, the Libyan who had started the conflict, never surrendered in person. He sent messengers with tribute and oaths of loyalty instead. Pia accepted this. He had proven his point. By 716 BCE, Pia controlled all of Egypt. He was recognized as Pharaoh from the Mediterranean to the Fourth Cataract. The Black Pharaohs had arrived. The 25th dynasty, the Kushite Dynasty, would rule Egypt for over 50 years. These Black Pharaohs governed as legitimate Egyptian kings, adopting all the traditional pharaonic titles and performing all the traditional rituals. But they were also distinctly Nubian. They wore different royal crowns, adding the double rayus, 2 serpents instead of Egypt's traditional one. They continued to be buried in pyramids in Nubia, not in Egypt. They maintained their capital at Napata while ruling Egypt from Thebes and Memphis. Pia's brother Shabaka succeeded him around 707 BCE. Shabaka took Kushite control of Egypt even further. He moved the royal court to Memphis, the traditional Egyptian capital, presenting himself as a fully Egyptian pharaoh. He commissioned Egyptian monuments, sponsored Egyptian temples, and patronized Egyptian arts and letters. Shabaka also showed himself to be a religious reformer. He had ancient religious texts copied and preserved. He restored temples throughout Egypt. He presented himself as returning Egypt to its traditional values that the Libyans and Egyptians themselves had neglected. But it was Taharka, Shabaka's nephew, who would be the greatest of the Kushite pharaohs. Taking the throne around 690 BCE, Taharka ruled an empire that stretched from the Mediterranean to the confluence of the White and Blue Niles, over 2,000 kilometers of the Nile Valley under one ruler. Taharka was a prodigious builder. At Karnak, his massive colonnade still stands. At Memphis, he constructed palaces and temples. Throughout Nubia, he built or renovated dozens of temples. At Kawa, Sanam, and other sites, inscriptions celebrate his piety and generosity. He also supported Egyptian culture. Scribes and artists flourished under his patronage. Egyptian art experienced a renaissance, looking back to Old Kingdom models for inspiration. This period, sometimes called the Kushite Renaissance, saw Egyptian civilization revitalized by its African rulers. But storm clouds were gathering from the east. The Assyrian Empire, centered in Mesopotamia, had become the most powerful military force in the ancient world. With iron weapons, siege technology, cavalry, and ruthless tactics, the Assyrians had conquered everything from Persia to the Mediterranean coast. Egypt was next on their list. In 674 BCE, the Assyrian king Esarhaddon launched the first invasion of Egypt. Taharka met him in battle and remarkably defeated him. The Assyrians withdrew and Taharka celebrated his victory with new monuments. But Esarhaddon came back. In 671 BCE, he returned with a larger army, better prepared and more determined. This time, the Assyrians broke through Taharka's defenses and captured Memphis. Taharka retreated south to Thebes and then to Nubia. For the next 7 years, Egypt became a battlefield. Taharka would counterattack and reclaim Memphis, only to face another Assyrian invasion. The Assyrians would conquer Egypt only to have Taharka drive them out again. It was a brutal stalemate. Finally, in 664 BCE, the Assyrian king Ashurbanipal launched a massive invasion that settled the matter. Assyrian armies swept through Egypt, captured Thebes, and sacked the great city looting temples, destroying monuments, and carrying away treasures accumulated over centuries. Tahaka's successor Tantamani tried one last desperate counterattack but failed. The 25th dynasty was over. The Kushite Pharaohs withdrew to Nubia forever. Egypt would never be ruled from Nubia again. The loss of Egypt could have destroyed Kush, but instead it transformed it. Retreating to Nubia, the Kushite kings focused on consolidating their African kingdom, and what they built was remarkable. The kingdom of Napata continued to flourish for another 3 centuries. The kings still used Egyptian royal titles and maintained the fiction that they were pharaohs, but their focus was purely Nubian now. They built pyramids for their tombs at Nuri and El Kuru near Napata. These pyramids were smaller than Egypt's but more numerous. Eventually, Nubia would have more pyramids than Egypt. The royal tombs reveal extraordinary wealth. Gold jewelry, elaborate weapons, fine pottery, and luxury goods from across the Mediterranean world filled the burial chambers. Kush remained rich, controlling the gold mines and trade routes of the region. But the kingdom faced challenges. Egypt, now under the Kushite Dynasty, became hostile. Conflicts erupted along the border. To the east, new powers emerged in Arabia, and within Nubia itself, the power dynamics were shifting. Around 591 BCE, an Egyptian army under Pharaoh Psamtik II invaded Nubia, sacking Napata and desecrating royal monuments. Although Kush recovered, the raid demonstrated Napata's vulnerability. The city was too close to Egypt, too exposed to northern aggression. Gradually, the center of power shifted south to a new city, Meroe. Around 300 BCE, Meroe became the official capital of Kush. Located between the 5th and 6th cataracts, over 500 kilometers south of Napata, Meroe was perfectly positioned. It sat near iron ore deposits, had reliable rainfall for agriculture, and controlled trade routes connecting the Nile Valley to the Red Sea and the African interior. The move to Meroe marked a fundamental transformation. The kingdom became less Egyptian and more distinctly African. A new culture emerged, the Meroitic civilization. The most visible change was linguistic. The Meroites developed their own script, both a hieroglyphic version for monumental inscriptions and a cursive version for everyday writing. Meroitic script was based on Egyptian hieroglyphics, but represented the Nubian language, not Egyptian. Today we can read Meroitic script phonetically, but we still cannot fully translate it, because Meroitic was a unique language, unrelated to any known language family. This makes Meroe one of the great mysteries of African history. We can read their words but not understand their meaning. But Meroe's greatest achievement was industrial. The city became an iron-working center on a scale unprecedented in Africa. Huge slag heaps still surround the ancient city, evidence of intensive iron smelting. Meroe produced iron tools, weapons, and trade goods that spread throughout northeastern Africa. This made Meroe extraordinarily wealthy and militarily powerful. While Mediterranean civilizations had been using iron for centuries, iron remained rare in much of Africa. Meroe's iron monopoly gave it enormous economic and military advantages. In 30 BCE, Rome conquered Egypt. The Roman Emperor Augustus now controlled the Nile Valley up to Kush's northern border. It seemed inevitable that Rome, having swallowed Egypt, would attempt to conquer Nubia next. Augustus's prefect in Egypt, Gaius Petronius, decided to test Kush's defenses. In 25 BCE, Roman forces raided Nubian territory, destroyed statues of the Kandake, and occupied several border towns. This was a mistake. Queen Amanirinas, the reigning Kandake, responded with fury. She personally led an army north into Roman Egypt, attacking the garrison town of Syene and sacking the city of Philae. Her forces captured Roman prisoners, toppled statues of Augustus, and carried the bronze head of the emperor back to Mero as a trophy. Rome could not let this stand. Petronius led a counterattack, pushing deep into Nubia. Roman legions captured Napata and destroyed it. They marched further south toward Mero itself.